So again, good evening, everybody. The four speakers we have with us tonight are heads of four of the major county functions who assist individuals in our community with mental health and substance use issues. Uh, I've experienced that they all share a commitment of supporting individuals on their journey to wellness and have compassion for all the challenges we face. Uh, they're going to be sharing the work they do individually and the work they do together on new initiatives for ongoing improvement. The first speaker we have is Karen Kern. She's the Deputy Director of the Behavioral Health Division and really leads all the adult behavioral health activities as well. Dr. Lisa Gutierrez Wang is the Director of the Children's Behavioral Health Unit. Sheriff Chris Clark is a sheriff and coroner for our county, and Heather Rogers is the head of the Office of the Public Defender. So we have really four major leaders that are working together across kind of the whole range of interactions that a lot of our community has around mental health and substance use. So we're really appreciative of their time this evening and the work they do for our community. So Karen, if you could kick us off. Oh, and what I'd like to we're going to do all the questions. If you have questions on the presentations or to the speakers, if you could put those in the chat, we're going to have the Q&A after the four speakers at the end. And if we're not able to get to the questions, we're going to try to get back to the individuals asking those questions after later in the week. So thank you. Karen?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. I'm going to be talking a little bit about our CARE Act services, our behavioral health bridge housing, the Justice Involved CalAIM initiative, and also just an update on our mobile crisis system. And then I'm going to pass the mic to Dr. Lisa Gutierrez Wang to talk about our Children's Crisis Center, which is coming open very soon, and also some of our equity work that we're doing in behavioral health. And we have actually an ask for all of you as well. So Sophia, if you could help me with the slides, that would be fantastic. And then next one. And then next one. And then next one, sorry. And you guys will receive all of these slides. I believe NAMI will send them out to you so that you have them for resource. So I'm going to start off talking about CARE Act. CARE Act, it was legislation that requires us to provide a voluntary civil court supported program for individuals with very specific diagnostic criteria as well as other criteria. And I kind of run through that for you. It is a voluntary program, meaning that there's no judge that orders somebody into this sort of treatment, or it doesn't require, in fact, it doesn't, it's people who have criminal cases are not necessarily eligible for care. They would go through another court process. So you must have a diagnosis on the schizophrenia or psychosis spectrum. And ideally, not necessarily, but many of the services are geared toward people experiencing homelessness. So homelessness and serious mental illness are sort of paired together in this legislation. The program itself offers specialty behavioral health services. So that's on our sort of continuum of case management, peer support, coordination with other different health and housing programs, as well as therapy and psychiatric services, occupational therapy if needed. And the case manager in particular works really closely with the client on developing a care plan. And then that care plan is approved by the judge and goes through the court process throughout the year that the person might be in treatment. So there's some key things. The person must meet the diagnostic criteria. They also must have met the thresholds of having 2 5250 hospitalizations, with the most recent being in the last 60 days. Again, it is voluntary. Clients in this program have at least once monthly court appearances, sometimes more often, depending on their situation. But those appearances are supported by the peer and the case manager. And as I said, the care plan is developed based on participants' input. So the participants actually choose the interventions. The judge does not order them into treatment or require that they do a specific type of treatment. They aren't necessarily mandated to take medications. It's really a voluntary program based on what that participant wants to work on. And then next slide. Okay, talked about that, client-driven and voluntary. Participants can drop out of the program at any time. Again, there's no consequences. It's a voluntary program. If the person does choose not to participate in care anymore, we still engage them in other services and, help them onto a recovery path if they are willing to work with us. If they do stay in services for up to a year, then they graduate and they're eligible to spend another year in the care court process if they so choose. We have received a lot of petitions so far. Most of them are for individuals who have already engaged with county behavioral health services. So they're known to us, which makes it a little bit easier when we're working on a petition. However, because it's voluntary, then they don't necessarily have to participate, and most of them have chosen not to. I put on here a couple of different resources. There's support with petitions available at the Superior Court Self-Help Center, which is at 701 Ocean in the basement. And then we have an email on here if you have additional questions. I know that we've had a lot of loved ones attempting to secure a petition for their child or other family member or friend. And it isn't that it's kind of a lengthy process, and the paperwork that you need to fill out and all the things that you need to be able to basically provide to the court to show that this person is eligible. And so we want to make sure that we help you with that. If the person has been engaged with us, we may be able to determine whether or not they're eligible just based on our experience. So that email there, hsabhcare@santacruzcountyca.gov, is where you'll go if you're having a hard time with the self-help. Okay, next slide. I'm pairing the CARE Act services with behavioral health bridge housing because the intention of that housing is to prioritize care participants. So if we have a care participant that is experiencing homelessness, they will be a priority admission to the behavioral health bridge housing. Bridge housing is at Midtown location right next to the CSP and Puff on Soquel Avenue by La Fonda right there. It will have a 24/7, it is a closed campus. Let me start with that. It's a closed campus where people are housed temporarily until they can find permanent housing. So the length of stay is really determined by when we're able to get the individual into a place of their own that might be either supportive housing or, any other kind of housing situation that is permanent. They'll receive services through the full service partnership team, which right now is iHeart, the integrated housing and recovery team. And then they'll also have on-site resident services provided through Housing Matters. This is a low barrier center. And so there really aren't, the only requirements are is that you need to have a serious mental illness or a co-occurring disorder and be experiencing homelessness. So you come as you are, and then we sort of work with you based on, again, what your needs are and how we can kind of engage you in that moment. Pets are welcome, couples are welcome. We have several double suites that we're able to serve people in. And yeah, we've got if you drive down Soquel, you'll see the fence up and the demo is starting, which is awesome because it's been a long haul to get to this point. So we're super excited that the process is finally underway. And then we're hoping that construction is complete for an opening plan for late winter, early spring. And then next slide. Okay, I'm going to touch on the CalAIM Justice Involved Initiative, and then next slide. So the gist of this initiative is really, it's a combination of, or a collaboration between behavioral health, the sheriff's office, probation, and also human services. And the whole point of it is really to ensure that people are either re-enrolled in Medi-Cal or not disenrolled in Medi-Cal while they're incarcerated, and that they're able to leave jail or re-enter into the community with the necessary services already in place, sufficient medication to get them through to their next appointment, and services can actually start while people are in jail to ensure that we have like all the assessments in place and all the providers secured. It calls for a warm handoff for health and behavioral health services, meaning that the staff that is working on the jail side actually meets the community side provider outside as the person is re-entering community. We're hoping that we're going to be able to work on a 30-day supply of meds for the individual as they leave, just to make sure that there's not a gap for them. It would allow for direct entry into SUD treatment. The way it works now is a judge can basically say, let's assess this person for SUD treatment. And if that person qualifies or meets the residential level of care, they can get on a list. But there's not really a way currently for jail staff to make that determination and refer them directly into treatment. So we're working on a workflow for that. And then we already have linkages to behavioral health services for local people that are incarcerated out of county. So if someone from Santa Cruz gets arrested in, San Jose, for example, and gets placed in San Jose and Santa Clara jail, we're able to serve them immediately upon return to the community as they reenter. Next slide. So like I said, it's a collaborative effort. I put the website on here for the DHCS information because it's pretty good. It gives you a lot of information. And then also I added Brenda Campbell's email address. She is the County Behavioral Health Program Manager that oversees our forensic services. And she's happy to talk with you if you have a loved one in jail that you're concerned about or that you are trying to figure out how to get services for. Let's see, what else do I have here? It's a stage implementation. And so each department has a role, and some departments are still working on theirs. Behavioral health has already started, developed their workflow for the out-of-county individuals that are coming back to our community, and also for the linkages for behavioral health services for specialty behavioral health. The Medi-Cal benefits and enrollments through HSD has already been implemented in jail, and people are already getting their Medi-Cal reinstated and or prevented from being cut off. And then beginning in October of 2026, the jail side reentry services, including enhanced care management and different supports for the mild to moderate behavioral health services, including those warm handoffs I talk about, will be implemented. And then next slide. So I wanted to just give an update on the mobile crisis and Crisis Now model. Next slide. So we did launch the Crisis Now mobile crisis team December of 2024. I had to think for a minute, what year are we in? There is now non-law enforcement assisted 24/7, 365 mobile crisis support for the community, meaning that you can call. There's an 800 number on the screen. That's our main behavioral health 800 number that we have used, for probably decades at this point. If you hit option 1, that automatically routes you to mobile crisis. The team members will come out and meet community members anywhere. So in their home, in a school, wherever the crisis is happening, or wherever somebody feels that there might be help needed. There's a follow-up that is included in this service, and so it's the person comes out, meets with the individual, or I should say the team comes out and meets with the individual, tries to figure out what's going on. Oftentimes it's really just maybe even de-escalating that situation or providing some support in the moment, and then referring to or linking to services in the community. So we will then follow up, call the person, find out how things are going, make sure they don't need any more assistance, and just kind of keep that going for them. In addition, if somebody does happen to call 988, we get a lot of questions. How come you didn't just link it to 988, to make it easy for people, or, why does it have to be an 800 number? The state in their implementation guidelines required us to have an 800 number. And since we already had this 800 number, we chose to keep the same 800 number, but offer a way to just sort of route the calls to the mobile crisis team. We're hoping that at some point, it's probably going to take a few years, but at some point, we're going to be able to link mobile crisis teams throughout the state through that 988 number and call center. The issue at hand is the geolocation, which is something that 911 is able to have when they get dispatch calls, but that 988 does not have that technology yet. And then there's a website down there if you need more information. And next slide. This is just the basic pillars of the Crisis Now model. It's really someone to call, someone to respond, somewhere to go, and then just the use of evidence-based practices. And then the next slide illustrates, why it was developed, the system barriers of, incarceration or psychiatric boarding, the instability of financing for crisis services, the silos, et cetera. And so this Crisis Now model with those 4 components in the earlier slide I just showed you offers a much more cohesive approach with a no wrong door approach, and also sort of a partnership with advocacy and funding that works really well. And I think that's all I have. And Lisa's up next.
Thank you, Karen. And just love watching the chat. Lots of great questions that we'll get to. But my turn, I'm going to jump in and provide some information on the Children's Crisis Center. So we'll go to the next slide. So I am hoping that most folks are aware that we were able to secure funding to purchase a building at 5300 SoCal. And this was a couple years back, and we have been in the process of renovating the inside of this building to house 2 key programs, a Children's Crisis Stabilization Unit and a Children's Crisis Residential Program. And so the Children's Crisis Stabilization Unit will basically be an 8-chair unit to really provide that short-term assessment, screening, safety planning, and ideally discharge back into the community, or if needed, additional stabilization and transition to the Children's Crisis Residential Program, or if needed, to an out-of-county inpatient unit. So this is really filling the gap of what we used to have on a more limited basis through telecare to be able to serve youth. So that will be housed on our first floor of this new building. And then our second floor will house the Children's Crisis Residential Program. And this is going to be a 16-bed program that a youth may stay for 1 or 2 weeks to further stabilize after a psychiatric crisis. So this could be a program that they transition to from the Crisis Stabilization Unit for further stabilization. We would engage family members, caregivers, to really support in that stabilization and longer term planning so that youth can successfully return home. Or this could also be used as a step down if a youth does ultimately go out of county to an inpatient hospital setting. They could return back into the county, potentially coming into this crisis residential program for additional support before stepping back into the home. So those are the 2 programs that are going to be housed in our building. We'll go to the next slide. And this is a picture of the building, but it doesn't look like this any longer. This is the building right next to the sheriff's main building. So folks may see it as they're driving down the 1. And the big difference is that we were able to secure some wonderful art for the building. So you will see some murals that are painted on the outside of the building, and we have murals going in the inside. We went through a selection process that also included youth in selecting the artist and the type of art that we would have in this space, because we really want to make sure that this is welcoming for children, youth, and caregivers and family. So we wanted to start even from the art, thinking about the actual layout of how these programs will look, and then really focus now on the programming. So as I mentioned, we're looking at a capacity of up to 8 youth being served at any given time in the crisis stabilization unit, which is that short term, and up to 16 children and youth being served in the crisis residential, which is that slightly longer term additional services to really help stabilize and prepare youth and families for that return home. We'll go to the next slide. All right. Oh, here's actually a picture of some of the painting on the building. So you'll see here some of the murals that have gone up on the front. So we are projecting that the actual construction, so everything that's going on with the building, that will be completed by mid-May. I can't believe May 1st is tomorrow. So we're looking at this being completed really, really soon. I had a meeting earlier and we had some new photos coming up and just, everything is coming into place. So very, very soon, the building will actually be ready for us to begin housing programs. What we're currently doing is working with a community-based organization. This is a provider that works with multiple counties throughout the state to basically come in to provide these two services. So to run the crisis stabilization unit and the crisis residential program. They're also proposing to actually provide a few other programs that would really fill in some gaps in our children's system of care and our continuum. So we're really excited about that. And as those things become finalized, we'll definitely be sharing that information with the community. With respect to when we're anticipating programming being available, we are really looking at early fall, but we will keep folks posted or updated on that date. We'll go to the next slide. So one of the things that we are doing is also reaching out to youth advisory bodies, different groups, to really help us think through the naming of the building and the facility itself. So we do have an active survey. This is a QR code. Individuals throughout the community can respond. We really are hoping to get a lot of youth voice, but adults, caregivers, folks can also share their thoughts on the name for our building. So please, click on this QR code. We will also make sure that the flyers go out and get distributed. So I'll make sure to get those to Sophia. But basically, we have some options in this survey, options that are more kind of like specific to like a youth crisis recovery center. We have other categories that are more like nature-based names and a few other options. And then, of course, there is space for you just to go ahead and suggest a completely new name that we will consider. So if you have an interest in that or have some great ideas, please be sure to share that via the survey. All right, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is a new topic. One of the things that we do in behavioral health is that we do regularly ask for feedback from clients, caregivers, other folks that interact with our services. We do that in a few different ways. On an annual basis, we do have a client perception survey. And so that is an opportunity for youth, caregivers, adult clients to share feedback on what it's been like to receive services through county behavioral health and our contract providers. Our next client perception survey is actually going to be taking place May 19th through the 23rd. So during that 1 week window, everyone who is seen either by the county or our contract providers will be invited to complete a client perception survey. And they can do that by either filling out a survey in paper-based form, or we also can allow them to do that via an electronic format. So that's one way we collect information on a yearly basis. We also at our clinics have little kiosks that are called our Happy or Not kiosks that allow clients to be able to give us direct feedback. And it's called a Happy or Not kiosk because there's little smiley faces that folks can go ahead and select to indicate the level of satisfaction with that particular visit. And there's a few different questions that we ask to really solicit feedback about how we're doing. So we have our annual client perception survey, we have our kiosks in the reception areas of both of our clinics, and now we're actually launching this particular survey to get feedback from clients, both current and past, and other folks in the community that are familiar or might have feedback about the way we deliver service that would be beneficial for us to better understand how to plan for continuous quality improvement with a primary focus of ensuring that we are being as equitable as possible and that we're really thinking about access for all of our community. So we'll go to the next slide. And this is just a little bit of information about our Behavioral Health Equity Collaborative. So this was initiated a few years back. It has representatives from the community at large, as well as staff from County Behavioral Health and folks from our contract partners. They meet regularly and are really looking at specific issues related to access and equity. And so they were the ones that really wanted to survey the community to collect more information. So this was a specific idea and request that came from this body. We'll go to the next slide. So they designed this survey to really gather more feedback, as I mentioned, from current and former clients, family members, and other community members. And what they're hoping to do is actually have a rolling survey. And as they get information in, the group themselves will take a look at what the data is saying, and then they'll be recommending various strategies for us to consider with respect to improvements. We'll go to the next slide. So we are asking partners to share this survey and consider completing this survey so we can get that feedback. And so I'll go to the next slide, which should have the flyer, or actually, we can go to the next slide as well. Here we go. So here's the flyer. We do have the flyer in English and Spanish. This one also does have the QR code that would take you directly to the survey. It just takes about, I completed it, it's like 5 minutes. Might take a little bit longer if you want to put in additional comments. But we really are hoping that folks will consider completing it and then sharing it with their networks. Because as I mentioned, there's various ways that we collect feedback. And this is just another opportunity for us to get information that can ultimately help us continuously improve the way that we do our work. All right, I think that was my last slide. So I think I'm going to turn it back over to Mike or Noelle.
Mike, you're on mute. You're still on mute.
Okay, there it is. A little slow. Sorry. I think we'll go to Chris next, if we could.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Chris Clark with Sheriff Corner here in Santa Cruz, and it's a pleasure to be with you tonight, just to kind of share some things. I'm going to go over a few things. One, I want to start with who we're talking about when we're talking about folks in custody, and I want to talk about what programs that we are providing both in the community and for folks incarcerated, and ultimately where we need to be, in my opinion. So in terms of who, I want to go over to some statistics to kind of like level set a little bit. Currently today, we have 340 people in custody amongst our 4 facilities. To give you an idea, our main jail has a capacity rating of 319 people. Blaine Street has a capacity of 32, 96 folks at Roundtree, which is our minimum medium, and 64 people at our rehabilitation or reentry facility. So 319 people are our main jail, and I want you to keep that number in mind, because that's ultimately where we do the most treatment for the most acute folks that come in custody. And I'm going to go over some additional numbers with you. So of that 340, 78% of that population is on some form of medication. 50% of that overall population is on mental health related medication. 37% of that number has some sort of chronic medical condition. And then just to get even more specific, we have 92 individual people receiving medication-assisted treatment for substance use disorder. We have 9 on detox protocol. 13 folks are incompetent to stand trial right now that we're servicing. We have 11 with disability, with some form of a disability accommodation. And then I might have mentioned this, 9 folks are detoxing. And then we have eight folks that qualify as seniors. They're 64 and older. It's a challenging population for a lot of reasons, but these folks need ultimately the most care, and that's ultimately who we're focused on. I think that's frankly the population to me, that we need to reimagine what caring for that population looks like, especially in custody. And so I'll go over kind of some programs we're running. And so, the Criminal Justice Council report noted a handful of highlights. I'm not going to go into all of them, but the biggie there is our need for a new facility. And I'll tell you why here in just a minute. But in terms of programs we're currently running, we have a few things going on. One is our focused intervention team. This is a team of folks. We were kind of one of the first in the state, if not the country, to start operating a program like this about 5, 6 years, actually more than that. It's been about 7 years ago now, where we have deputies and a sergeant paired up with clinicians, with some folks from Karen's team, and they're able to manage a list of people that we see that are high users of our system and in need of really the most help. We're talking folks that are getting arrested. It's folks you see downtown that are in some form of acute crisis. They're potentially getting arrested quite a bit. They're using our hospitals. And so right now we can manage a list of about 30 people. And what I mean by that is we have that team of deputies and clinicians that go out every day, and they go and they find folks on this list, and they just check in on them to make sure, are they currently taking medication? Are they making their appointments? And just proactively making sure that their needs are being met to reduce the recidivism with that population, and ultimately help them get stable and help them get proper care. So that's our focused intervention team. Ultimately, it'd be great to scale that team larger in the county with other agencies, but currently that's what we're doing as far as a proactive deputy clinician team. We have our Care Alert program that we launched about 6 months ago or so. I think we were the first in the state. We weren't the first in the country. That program actually came the way of a community member that's actually on this meeting today. And in my opinion, it's a great program. And I'm going to go into the specifics, but the way this program came to us, it came from the public. There are a lot of great ideas. I can tell you at the sheriff's office, we don't know everything. I mean, there are a lot of smart people here in the county, and we rely on folks like you to help bring things to us. We're doing research in our own right. Obviously, we want to make sure we're providing the best care, and what does best practice say about specific topics. But in terms of ideas, that's where, and I've said this before, co-producing public safety means, obtaining input from all of you to find the best way to be able to provide public safety and public safety services here in the county. So with Care Alert, in essence, this was is a system where folks can proactively, they can provide us information about a loved one. It's voluntary. We're not talking about HIPAA-related information. We're just talking about things that can help a deputy or officer countywide in law enforcement better navigate a crisis-related call if that call for service were to be generated at a specific location. And so what that looks like is it could be like, hey, my loved one loves to go, they may suffer from some sort of issue, not necessarily specifically what the issue is, but they would rather be called like Jane or Joe, not Johnny, or you could pick the name, or they would rather be contacted by a female officer rather than a male officer, and some other forms of triggers that may that may cause some sort of elevated reaction in the person that we're dealing with, to be able to ultimately give that information to our deputies or officers to help them better navigate those calls. And so that's our Care Alert. So far, we've had 30 folks sign up for that. And that in terms of our experience here at the sheriff's office, we've had at least one call where somebody was suffering from, it sounds like, based on the nature of the call, a combination of autism and schizophrenia. And based on the information that was provided by their family and what went into the Care Alert for that specific location. That information was given to our deputy. They were able to resolve that call for service to get that person the most help without ever being able to respond. And so that to me is a success. It's like, sometimes we as law enforcement, we can amplify, we can sometimes make things worse, by showing up. And I think that's worth acknowledging. And so it's not because we're not there to help, but we're there ultimately to be able to provide the best outcome. And so that was a specific situation where that it's a success, frankly, for that particular call and that particular family. With regards to mental health care in custody, I want to go over some things. We recently transitioned over to NAVCare from WellPath. When it comes to mental health care in custody, there's very few vendors who provide that type of service. We believe we're getting really great care with NAVCare. And with that, we're trying to move towards NCCHC accreditation. It's a National Commission on Correctional Healthcare Standards. We believe with NAVCare, they have the resources right now in place with what we're contracting with them to provide to be able to get to that accreditation standard. It's the gold standard when it comes to medical and mental health care in custody. And so that's what we're aiming for. We're hoping to be able to do that within the coming months. And so right now, when it comes to mental health staffing in custody, there's 6 mental health clinicians that work with NAVCare in our custody situation. And then the question might be, well, what does mental health look like for folks that get arrested? And I kind of want to go over that. So there's a mental health screening that when anybody is brought in via intake at the jail, from the first few minutes that they show up, obviously we're doing medical and mental health screenings to determine what needs this person may have. And they're using a Columbia mental health assessment tool is what's being used as folks come in. And then if there are any concerns, those concerns are being addressed all the way to the extent of whether or not they meet 5150 criteria, they're not going to be with us. And then ultimately, we want to get them out and get them to telecare. If folks are being housed, a more in-depth medical and mental health assessment is done. That's for people that are going to spend longer than like a day or two with us. And then they're monitored continuously throughout, their stay with us. And by continuously every morning at 8 a.m., we have a crisis intervention team meeting that I know Karen's familiar with. And so that's kind of like an all hands on deck meeting with all of the major players when it comes to providing care for people in custody, whether that be medical, mental health. That's folks that work in booking. That's our housing supervisors. That's our sergeants and our managers and our jail chief. And we talk specifically about people. And we're talking about anybody that has any sort of mental health related issue and any sort of acute medical related issue that we need to follow and stay up on. And then we're assessing risk and then making sure that if there's anything they need, that we're following up on that. And that's in addition to any sort of mental health or medical referral that a person may submit on their own. They can do that via tablet. They can do that via officer. But that's in addition to just if somebody says I need help with a particular issue, then that's going on. And then ultimately, when it comes to and then within that CIT meeting, just to kind of get a little more specific, not just people with mental health related issues, but it's folks that are incompetent to stand trial, our senior population, folks that are either requested to be on their own or for some reason they need to be on their own because they could be a danger to other people. And then we're getting to them during our rounds that we do 3 days a week. So our medical staff is going around 3 days a week to check specifically on them. And then ultimately when they get released. So when they come up for release, we're screening them again to make sure that when we discharge folks, that ultimately we're discharging them to the right place. And that could mean that if somebody needs they may qualify for 5150 being gravely disabled or whatever the case may be. And it's making sure that upon release, they're getting to where they need to be. I want to touch on the incompetent to stand trial related numbers. And I think, as I mentioned, right now we have 13 folks that are incompetent to stand trial. And the unfortunate thing is there's just very, very few state hospital beds for these folks to go to be restored. And so ultimately we have to do the best we can and everything we can to be able to to care for these folks while they're with us. And then ultimately they'll go to a state hospital, they'll get restored to competency, they'll come back, and then we care for them for a specific period of time until the court process goes through. And so 13 folks that we're monitoring for that. And then with our sobering center, that's a program that we opened back in 2014. It was shuttered during COVID for a time, but it's since come back. To give you an idea on those numbers, it's a very successful program. It's a county-funded program, but it's where folks that are, say, come into contact with law enforcement and they're arrested for first-time DUI or some sort of low-level substance use disorder offense, or they're intoxicated, or they're under the influence of drugs in public, they would go to the sobering center. We see about that program is administered by Janice. We see about 190 clients that come into our sobering center per month. It equates to about 7 a day. To give you an idea on demographics, it's mostly male, folks mostly between the ages of 18 and 39. The ethnicity of the folks we're seeing mirrors county demographics when it comes to race. Weekends are higher, and then some of the direct benefits of the sobering center are direct referrals to Janice, where folks come in needing more help. With that, we did 10 transfers to Janice last month and 28 overall for the year, which is great. And then the savings to law enforcement to get folks back out onto the street. The average wait time for an officer or deputy to check someone into the sobering center runs about 4 minutes, 4 to 5 minutes, unlike almost an hour to book somebody into custody. Routinely, you see this in other counties in the state. If they don't have a sobering center, they're booking people into jail. And so, they're getting what treatment you can get within that 5 to 6 hours in a booking facility, where this program provides a direct connection to Janice. It's 5 minutes and gets officers back on the street, which is a savings to the cities here in the county and our sheriff's office and everybody that lives in the unincorporated area. In terms of what we need a new facility. We need a more modern, we need to reimagine, frankly, what does modern medical and mental health care look like for folks that are incarcerated? There's a direct benefit to public safety if we can provide better outcomes for folks that are incarcerated upon release. CalAIM's a step in the right direction. And I saw a question there about medical care and mental health care and the cost of why doesn't Medi-Cal cover any of that in custody? They don't. And so CalAIM is a bridge in that direction, but ultimately the county is responsible for it when somebody comes in. And I could take any one of you through our main jail. We have 13 cells essentially that are there for folks with acute medical issues. That's not enough. It's a very, I hate to say this, but it's a dark, I hate to say it's the reality of it. It's not a very pleasant environment. And so we have folks that are experiencing acute related issues, and we need a more modern clinical related environment to be able to treat that population of people. And, ultimately we need a new main jail, I'll be honest, but our issue specific to the needs that we have right now is around folks that are suffering from acute medical and mental health related issues. And so that's a huge priority of mine in terms of our direction as a sheriff's office, is trying to figure out how do we do that, and how do we provide, we're providing the best care we can with the structure, with the facility that we have, but ultimately these folks deserve more. The county deserves more, and ultimately that's where I hope to take us as the sheriff's office, is being able to create a facility like that, to be able to do that for folks that really need the most help, to be able to get them in the best shape, to put them in the best position to be successful when they get released. So I threw a lot at you, and I know there's going to be a ton of questions, but and I'm happy and listen, if we run out of time, I'm happy to take questions directly. More than welcome to email me directly. You can or call me, and I'll make sure all my information's in the chat too. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather.
Thank you so much, Sheriff Clark. And I've just so enjoyed these presentations, and it's really an honor to be here. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you. All right. Can everyone see that? Fantastic. I am a big believer that strong public defense sits at the intersection of public safety and public health, which is what you've been hearing about tonight. And I have seen with my own eyes that strong public defense breaks harmful cycles, it heals communities. I want to tell you an anonymized story. The facts have been changed, but it's a story really that fits a lot of my clients. It's the story of Tyler. Tyler was charged with a serious felony. He was facing decades in prison, and my team met him soon after his arrest through our early representation project, which puts client advocates in the jail about 24 hours after their first law enforcement contact. We learned through a holistic intake that Tyler was struggling with sobriety, he was struggling with mental health issues, and he had been struggling with these issues his entire adult life. An unstable family life had led to gang involvement and a downward spiral, many convictions for serious offenses that brought him to this day, to this afternoon, where for the first time, a public defender asked him, "How did you get here, and how can we help you get out?" So what Tyler needed was a long-term dual diagnosis program. And to get them there, we had to persuade the court this was the right resolution of this very serious case and find a program, which I know you understand are two big, big mountains to climb. So we wrapped an interdisciplinary defense team around Tyler, a social worker, a client advocate, an investigator, an attorney, mental health experts. And we tried to get him what he believed he needed to break the harmful cycles that had derailed the life that he dreamed of for himself. A big part of helping Tyler was working with behavioral health and working with Sheriff Clark's team to get psychiatric care in the jail. Tyler needed to be on medicine for him to be able to help us with his defense and to make good decisions. But the problem was culturally, mental health issues had been so stigmatized that Tyler saw this as a sign of weakness. He said, "If I take medications to help myself, I am weak." And our team had to work with Tyler on that. We had to remind him that admitting that this was an issue took courage and strength, and that it was a sign of his strong character, his hope, and his will that he was willing to help himself. And we were finally able to get him where he needed to be. So once the judge saw the changes in Tyler, once the judge saw what a different person he was from the first time he appeared in court until he'd been on medications for a while, the judge was willing to take a chance on Tyler, willing to say, "You know what? Let's get him into treatment. And if he does well, we can talk about next steps." So we found him a treatment program, not easy. Our team here is small but mighty. Our client advocates have mapped resources, not just in this community, but across the state, to find programs that will really work for the people that we serve. And we found Tyler a great program. With the judge's support, with our team's support, he got into this program and he thrived. I can tell you that now, just a little over a year later, Tyler is attending community college with the goal of becoming a counselor. He is working at the treatment program that gave him a new lease on life. And his goal is to work with young people impacted by gang involvement to find a path out of that lifestyle. And Tyler truly believes that so many times youth are attracted to that lifestyle because they're lonely, they're suffering from trauma, mental health disorders, substance use disorders, and they turn to folks they believe have their best interests at heart, instead of to what might otherwise be natural supports, like parents who aren't working all day long. So Tyler's goal is to work with youth to break down the stigmas around mental health. And we truly believe that his case will ultimately be dismissed, and we'll work with him to clear his record, because the sky is the limit for Tyler now that he has really broke this harmful cycle that brought him into the system. So Tyler is just one example of the thousands of people that we defend every year using what we call a community-based whole person defense model. What I have found in my over 20 years as a public defender is that my clients are victims of poverty and trauma. They're often vulnerable, unhoused, suffering from mental health and substance use disorders. Almost all of them have throughout their life been crime victims themselves. But they are also resilient, they're hopeful, and they're brave. And our defenders are doing something different than has ever been done in this community. They are looking behind the four corners of the criminal case to the person behind that case and asking, what can we, an interdisciplinary defense team, do to help you get out of the system, to break harmful cycles? And let me tell you something that we don't often talk about. This is the kind of defense that rich people get. This is the kind of defense that people with means get. The kind of defense that doesn't just say, what are the elements of the crime and what can I do for you in court? It's the kind of defense that says, I care about you and the outcomes for you, your family, your community. And this is the kind of defense that makes our community safer, healthier, and stronger. This is our model. We combine zealous advocacy in the courtroom and community with holistic representation. And what that means is our teams are not just lawyers. You cannot litigate your way out of the challenges we're facing in Santa Cruz County. You can't litigate your way out of homelessness, mental health and substance use disorders, our new fentanyl crisis, trauma, cycles of incarceration. My clients need social workers, they need advocates, they need trusted defenders in their corner to help them understand how helping break those cycles and working on those cycles will help their criminal case, will help us get them out of the system and back to their lives. Our holistic intake process assesses and addresses underlying issues. We ask about mental health, substance use, children, immigration, housing, education, career goals, professional licensing, and we try to craft defense plans that address not just the legal goals, which are incredibly important, but also the social goals, which are almost always enmeshed with the legal goals, and they're just completely interrelated. We serve some of our most vulnerable community members who are suffering from the most intractable problems. And what they need is support. They need support to lift themselves up and out of the system. And our goal is to keep our clients here in the center with our team wrapped around them so that they don't end up back at the sheriff's, back at the jail, back at the district attorney's office, on probation, becoming the consumers of our mental health resources in ways that are unnecessary. We want to figure out the root cause of the problem and address it. This pie chart just gives you a snapshot of the types of advocacy just our client advocate team provided last quarter. And what you can see here is that we work in the emergency room of the criminal legal system. Our clients have complex and urgent needs. A typical client may be homeless, living in poverty, suffering from a mental health and substance use disorder, and struggling with untreated trauma and its side effects. So this pie is a visual representation of the needs that we see in our community every time we walk down the street, the needs that you see. This is the same thing that we see. And the biggest areas of need are mental health and substance use advocacy, advocacy around coordinating benefits and treatment, and housing advocacy. Our neighbors, our loved ones, our children, the people that we serve are stuck in these harmful cycles that are costly in money, safety, yes, but they are also tremendously costly in human life. Community-based whole person defense gives people the support they need to break the cycles. So our work is deeply connected to mental health and deeply connected to public safety. If the people we serve don't come into the system with mental health challenges, they will almost certainly leave the system with mental health challenges. Being arrested, charged, convicted, and incarcerated are all traumatizing. And this is especially so if a client's conduct has harmed another human being or taken them away from a caregiving role, like a parent whose incarceration separates them from a child. The self-loathing, guilt, and despair can be overwhelming. So mental health diversion is one way that we can get better outcomes for our clients. This is a legal process that allows people who are accused of crimes related to a mental health disorder to receive treatment instead of getting a conviction or going to jail or prison. This is pretrial diversion, and it aims to provide alternatives to traditional criminal legal system involvement that address the root causes of that involvement. We work hand in hand with behavioral health to give people the supports that they need here, and our teams wrap around folks to create plans that will work for them based on their goals and their needs. Last quarter, just in a quarter, our defenders filed 26 mental health diversion motions on behalf of 13 clients, with 26 motions granted. And that means that we as a community chose care over cages for 26 cases, and 13 people are getting the help they need to break harmful cycles. We also represent people in behavioral health court. Behavioral health court is a post-adjudication review court. Here we partner with Santa Cruz County Behavioral Health, with my wonderful colleagues you heard from tonight, to address the needs of participants with severe mental illness and co-occurring substance use disorders. This is a collaborative court. It is aimed at providing multidisciplinary, team-based support to the people who need it the most. We also represent people in conservatorships who want to challenge their conservatorships or advocate for some kind of a step down. We work to safeguard their civil liberties, to advocate for what they want. We represent their needs and their ideas about their agency. And we also represent respondents in CARE Act petitions, which you heard about from Karen earlier. This is an important piece of the work that we're doing now. The last time that I looked at this data, there'd been about 9 petitions filed, with several pending investigation, and 2 were step downs from conservatorships. The majority of the other referrals came from family members. And so what we're seeing is that people who are trying to help their family members get more care, get housing, can use this process to do so. And the people who need more care and housing can voluntarily opt into this process to get that care. I will also say that we represent all the children who are charged with delinquency in Santa Cruz County. We have a dedicated social worker dedicated to those children, the same wraparound supports and wraparound teams there as we do for our adults. As part of our holistic defense model, we are absolutely committed to reentry. That includes providing and linking clients to resources for record clearance, post-conviction relief, immigration advocacy, case management, and supportive referrals. Our Clean Slate Project filed nearly 1,000 record clearance motions and petitions last year, with an over 95% success rate. And with our post-conviction relief work, we are shortening prison sentences, assessing old cases for racial justice issues, and doing everything possible to lift people out of the system. We are also collaborating with our partners to work on providing reentry services. It is my dream that our team can help the sheriff's team in behavioral health do reentry outtakes that are similar to the holistic intake we do at the beginning of a case, and that we can together wrap around people and again provide support for those enmeshed legal and social needs. Here at Public Defender as an organization, we are addressing the mental health needs of our own team to stand up to the stigma around mental health challenges and to make public defense more sustainable for the people who choose this calling. At our recent Defender training here, you can see that we had workshops on communication and dealing with grief. We talked about racism, cultural barriers, and healthy conflict. And we talked about how we can use our power in the courtroom to elevate our clients' stories, which is also healing for us, as we resist divisive and destructive narratives and encourage people-centered communication, people-centered service that leaves room for growth, compromise, and healing. Mass incarceration continues to be a challenge in our country and our county. Sheriff Clark shared the statistics with you. Today in this country, we have over 2 million people incarcerated in jails and prisons. Studies estimate that 45% of federal prisoners, 56% of state prisoners, and 64% of people imprisoned in local jails exhibit symptoms of serious mental illness. Yet only 3 in 5 people with a history of mental illness receive mental health treatment while incarcerated in prison, and less than half of people with a history of mental illness receive mental health treatment in jail. We have a long way to go to reach our goal of providing care over cages for people with mental health disorders. And I truly believe that we can go far by going together. I welcome your questions, your collaboration, your support. We are in this together, and I am just so grateful for this organization and for all of you that consistently show up for my clients who are struggling with the most acute needs. And I want you to know that this team will consistently show up for you. Thank you so much for having me. I have my information on the final slide. Many of you already have it. I do meet the public defender twice a month. I'm happy to share a cup of coffee and chat with you about anything except for a case, because I can't talk with you about cases. But I've met so many of you through that, and I extend that offer to all of you. Like Sheriff Clark, I feel like we learn so much from you about how we can elevate our service and do better. Thank you.
Well, that was great. Looking at the chat, I'm seeing all kinds of appreciation for all the work that, your teams are doing, and the leadership you're showing is fabulous. So, thank you for sharing all that information tonight and all the work you and your teams are doing. It's really appreciated. So some of the questions I picked up, and I'll go back and look at the chat. Noelle, maybe you could take a look at it as well to see if I'm missing anything. But one of the early questions, I think, was around the CARE Act and why use it? Is it around just getting access to housing? And there's another question around for people that have anosognosia and don't want to be or don't know that they need to be treated. Is there anything to address that? And maybe Karen, I'll just toggle those questions you around. What's the benefit of the CARE Act, and does it tie into the issue of anosognosia at all?
Yeah, and I also, Sophia, allow me to answer some of those questions in the chat. And so you'll see there's some replies if you want to scroll through there just for the sake of time. But the theory behind CARE Act is similar to that of assisted outpatient treatment or Laura's Law, in that there are people who have struggled to achieve a recovery path or get better, get wellness, but they just haven't been able to do it on their own. And so the thought is that with a structured process of a court that is voluntary and not necessarily through the criminal system where you're adjudicated, that might help motivate people to participate. So in other words, support, and then that structure of the court process for people to show up. The anosognosia is a tough one. There's not, it's very difficult to engage somebody who doesn't think they have a problem, right? Or who doesn't, think they have a need for any kind of treatment. So, if that's the case, this is, as I said, a voluntary program, and people have to want to do it. So unfortunately, it's not really going to address those issues at all. And we see that where I would say it might be one of the tougher things, because we have, again, loved ones or friends or whoever who really want people to get help, who see the challenges they're having or the harm it might be causing them, and and the individual themselves really need to be able to want to participate or engage for us to be able to help them. I would say the only exception to that is if there is a situation where grave disability is occurring, and then they might be eligible for a conservatorship, but that is a rarer case. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Karen. And there was a couple comments on, the crisis response. And in one case, the individual thought it's not used enough, or they were an encounter on the street was told that there's no alternative to a police response. So there may be kind of an opportunity for more communication in the community, more communication between, Chris, maybe your team and behavioral health team as that program gets ramped up. And it's still early days, so that wouldn't be surprising. But that was one of a couple of the comments that were in the chat.
And it was a little bit slow to start, but we have seen quite an uptick, and they're pretty busy actually. And we do get calls from law enforcement where there's not a safety issue, or where law enforcement doesn't need to. Law enforcement, in my experiences, does not want to go out on a mental health call unless there's a safety issue where their support might be needed. And so we have gotten some calls from law enforcement, in fact, all jurisdictions. And so I think as we get, again, it's December is when we launched it. It's now only, almost May. So I think as it gets more into our community culture that this service is available, we'll see even more.
Great. And Chris, how's your team feel about the crisis response team so far?
Yeah, so far it's been great. I mean, we've had some recent success with it, with just an incident that happened last week. So and Karen's absolutely right. Like where there's not a significant risk to other folks, or where we do not need to be involved, it's not a good place for law enforcement if there's other resources out there. And so this is something that's not new to us in terms of our sheriff's office. We've had mental health liaisons for a while now. We've used them as a primary tool to be able to gauge, folks in crisis, and we've done a lot of training internally. But ultimately, what Karen's team is moving in exactly the direction we need to be headed. So we're super supportive of Karen and her folks for sure, and they've been great.
Great, thank you. Lisa, I'm going to kind of ask a question and link it to the work Heather's doing. One of the points Heather makes is, a lot of the issues that, come to the justice system is involved with like childhood issues, trauma issues, social determinants, poverty and housing and things like that. With all the work you do, with the youth and children, do you see those as major factors around the core issues that come into your area?
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is what I see. And Lisa, I'm so sorry that question may have been for you, but I think it's just a yes, 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 right, all across the board, that the kids are not well right now. COVID really didn't help. There's a real struggle there. And I'm so excited about what Lisa and her team are doing to elevate that issue and bring, real services to our children. So I'll step back and let you chat on that.
No, that's okay. Yeah, the answer is definitely yes. I will say, the most common presenting needs for the youth coming into our specialty mental health services are anxiety, depression, and response to trauma. And those, are very related. I will say in the last about 2 years, we've seen anxiety really being that primary reason for coming into treatment. And we've been having more difficulty really being able to alleviate those symptoms with the treatment and interventions that we can offer. I think because there just is so much that children and families are having to navigate on an ongoing basis. So we're really needing to think about our interventions and how to have the biggest impact we can. But definitely that response to trauma, we of course get direct referrals from child welfare, from juvenile probation. That is a large part of the population that we serve at County Behavioral Health. I will say that, we're part of partnerships and really thinking about how to screen early for exposure to adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, really believing that if you can do that universally, especially in primary care, in pediatrics, very early, if you can identify those issues early, have conversations with caregivers, provide support around parenting, management of stress, access to resources, that truly has an impact, so that we will not get the referrals at our specialty mental health level. And then, of course, then that will not mean that we're seeing the presentation that Heather so eloquently presented on when they are adults. So definitely a lot of work to do along the continuum, but some pretty exciting things that are happening across the system.
Great. Thank you for that. I don't know if anyone wants to take this question. It's around, the county response to fentanyl, and it seems like it's under-resourced, is the opinion of the person that asked that question. Can any of you address what we may be doing across the county around the fentanyl and, some of the increase in substance usage?
Yeah,
I mean, I can just give a sentence on it, which is that, with Prop 36, we're criminalizing it, right? And so we've gone back to the old days of, people are suffering from substance use disorders. And so we throw in mandatory incarceration with a short path to prison. So it's really disheartening for me to see that, because what we really need is to take money that would otherwise go to incarceration and give it to my friends, Lisa and Karen, who are really doing the root cause work that needs to be done to solve these issues.
Yeah,
I'd just add to that, Mike, just treatment space for justice involved folks, right? Like, we have folks releasable to programs that ultimately there just isn't any space in the community to be able to send them to, and they sit in custody, and so which isn't where they should be, and so getting them to a proper treatment facility is important. I will say that just on a bright spot in a very terrible sort of in this epidemic of fentanyl, back 2 years ago, our overdose death rate was, we were disproportionately affected by Destinus County per capita than Santa Clara County. It was through the roof. In fact, we had to end up hiring an additional coroner investigator because we were seeing such an influx in that. So through harm reduction, through a number of things that that we've done countywide, we've seen, and it's a national trend, which is a good thing, that we've seen those deaths decrease. So which has been positive. But we've had, from our overdose death reviews that we kind of put together with public health and with other folks in the community, it's been, we're trying to work our way through that. But there's a couple things going on with it.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
And if I could just add one more thing, the Proposition 1, which the voters voted on, it's been feels like it's been about 2 years now, allows for infrastructure development through the Bond BCHIP project. And so the first applications that went in for Bond BCHIP were mostly focused around SUD. I think 5 total applications to expand residential treatment capacity, and 2 of those applications to expand detox capacity in our county. And so we'll get the results maybe next week, sometime in May. We're supposed to get the results of the awards for those proposals that went in. So we'll see what happens. And then there's another round, Bond BCHIP round 2, sorry, that is being released in May. And so there's another opportunity for people to apply for additional infrastructure development.
One thing too, Mike, not to belabor this topic, and I think I might have mentioned this at the beginning, but if I didn't, right now we're servicing 92 people with MAT services in custody, and that doesn't include another 10 that are on methadone, and that's a huge increase, 3-fold increase from where we were not even that long ago, with trying to just expand what we're doing with folks that experiencing substance use disorder in custody. So,
okay. Chris, and I think I had heard at one point that, the funding for the MAT treatment had gone away. Do you have the full funding you need for that program right now?
It was long. Well, we lost some funding for long-acting injectables, which is something we were looking at trying to go towards. It was a grant that we were hoping to get from the state that fell apart.
Okay.
It was just an additional service to help be able to provide, to folks as they're being released, to be able to curb cravings while we get them connected to other services after they're released. So.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. One question that came up, or a couple questions that came up that I'm not sure anyone can answer, is, what's happening with the budget and the impact on your services. There's a sense that the lab is closing, and I know there was just a preliminary budget review, and I know there's a lot of challenges for the county. Uh, and maybe that's all that needs to be said on that. But I don't know if anyone has any insight on that in terms of any immediate impact to your programs. Or we'll just wait and see. So I'd like to acknowledge that, all the work that you're now doing, all the initiatives you've continued to make have been in the face of a lot of financial challenges. And despite that, you've continued to take ground and make progress. And for that, we should all applaud you. And I know despite what happens in the budget, you're going to continue to do your best on that. So, uh, you know, we'd like to acknowledge that big fact and the fact that you're doing great in the space of that. At least from my perspective.
I can just say one thing. I'll say one thing about it because it's a difficult time for us. The state has gifted us with a lot of new mandates to implement that are not funded, and they're complicated and costly, and they're often interdepartmental. So Heather has been involved with us in a couple, and there's, whether they're court related or conservatorship related, we've got several of those. And so I will say that makes it very difficult with us when there's not additional funds available to implement those. It pulls funds away from other services. The other thing is we're coming up on the last year of MHSA, and with BHSA Prop 1 that starting in July of 2026, 30% of our funding that was that's currently spent on mental health programs is being pulled away to spend on housing subsidies, which will go to an individual once, and then year after year continue to support that one individual. So the climate is ahead is going to be challenging for us to try to really maintain the needed services and or expand needed services in the community. And then the last thing I'll say is that we are watching really closely the potential impacts from the federal government, which, if you're following, there's a lot of up and down happening, in the news. So we try not to do that. But the main thing that we are looking at are potential cuts to either Medicaid, which for us is Medi-Cal, or a work requirement for individuals who are eligible for Medi-Cal, because that will be challenging for a lot of our folks. And then, the other sort of constriction of, or I guess regionalization is the word they're using, but of the Social Security offices. So closing more local offices, taking away the phone option for asking for help on applications, et cetera, is also going to be challenging for our folks. But as you said, Mike, we're up for the task, and we'll do the very best that we can to ensure that the community receives the services they need.
Yeah, Karen, thanks for sharing that. Noelle, is there anything big that I'm missing in the chat? I'm having trouble seeing it with the light in my office right now.
No, thank you. I also wanted to open it up for anyone that has a live question or will want to ask a question.
Yeah, we probably have time for a couple of questions. If someone could raise their hand, we'll try to answer that. You can do it at the bottom on the raise the hand feature.
There's a button with the raise hand. Anyone?
No.
Genevieve?
Yes, thank you to everyone who has put time and energy into making this happen. I found this very, very informative as I try to broaden my scope of understanding in the Santa Cruz County. So thank you, first of all. Secondly, in another speaker meeting that had come up, it was almost like we floated this idea of like a mental health chamber of commerce, or basically I think at I guess the issue I'm trying to tackle is advocacy and navigating these changes that are coming or might come that affect us who suffer from mental illness. And echoing other questions that were brought out of just how do we find out where to find the right information and how to move in a way that's more holistic and more in tune with our values, I guess. That's probably way too large. I'm sorry.
Genevieve, for clarification, is your question, is there more of a centralized committee or group that we could go to around issues or advocacy that may not exist today?
Yeah, or maybe that I'm just not aware of, which I'm sure is much more likely.
We have a mental health advisory board meets monthly. I think it's the third Thursday from 3 to 5. There's a Teams option to join online if you can't be in person, and that information is available on the behavioral health website. That's always a really great place to share, ask questions, and also to just share if you see gaps in services or you have ideas on how we can do better. That's a really great forum for that.
Great. Thank you, Karen. Patricia?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. So we've been engaged with county mental health for 20 years with our daughter, who's 40. I want to say not last night, 3 nights ago, for the first time, she joined El Dorado Center as a step down. We are elated. She is focused. She is after a lot of jail time. And we are so grateful, so grateful. But my question is, and I alluded to it in the chat, I'm sorry, I kept saying so many things, but I love that you're addressing the current things and what you want to do still more of, and into the future, innovative and whatnot. But I've also been serving with the some committees, talking to the supervisors about the state mandated addition of nearly 5,000 housing units for our county. I mean, holy smokes, the infrastructure that's needed with that, I don't know. We're bursting at the seams. So with mental health, I mean, this is a prolonged look, a long vision. Is there anything coming down the pike from the state in terms of supporting the increase in population with mental health services? I mean, it's going to balloon all over again. Any news from the state on that?
Is the question about housing for people with mental illness or just mental health resources?
Mental health resources. I mean, housing, yes, that's a whole other thing. And I know that they are, doing some low income, but that was rezoned and redone. And the 25% of new construction is now to 6% for very low income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as I said, we have a lot of mandates gifted. If you have time, or you could research, we don't have a lot of time here to go through them all. But I want to say, Lisa, how many are there? There's 36 or 37 new initiatives and mandates that behavioral health has been gifted by the state to implement starting in 2022 and running through 2028. So we have our work cut out for ourselves. A lot of that is expanding or enhancing the current services that are available. But what I mentioned a few minutes ago is that many of them are actually there's no funding behind them. And so, as we move into a more challenging economy, or as I also mentioned, the challenges with the federal government and what decisions they may make that may impact the way that we're able to serve our clients, it's a little bit uncertain right now what it is we're going to be able to do, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of work to be done. So.
Well, I understand. And it always kind of comes down to the funding, doesn't it? I mean, yeah. Well, anyway, thank you for all the work you do, all of you.
Okay, well, I think maybe I'll close our session. First,
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I can't find the hands raising button, but I need to say something
Okay, go ahead,
about
please.
this budget.
Go ahead,
The
please.
Santa Cruz County supervisors are deciding on a budget. We have until June 3rd to decide. You can read it online, and I encourage everybody to do this because MHCAN will go down. HPHB is going to lose positions. There are 37 positions that will be cut from the access team that were never filled. There are a lot of questions about this that I have personally as I've looked for help for years now. So I just want to put out there that we all do have a responsibility to our local government to comment on this decision to cut full-time positions and serious, like HPHP, that's Homeless Persons Health Project on Coral Street. They're one of the few street-facing offices amongst all of the different nonprofits out there. They are actually there and will say hello to you face to face. There are very few of those that I've found personally while trying to get my SO into supportive housing. It took me 3.5 years, well, 2.5 years. He slept in my car. He has schizoaffective disorder. I just want everybody to take a look at the budget. That's all I'm asking. And see what you think, please.
That's a great point. Thank you.
And I just want to clarify, HPHP is not being proposed to be cut. So
there are 6 positions at HPHP.
Positions, but not the whole program.
Oh, not the whole program, but HPHP needs more people there, not fewer. I'm ignorant. I understand. I'm just a person here at street level saying, hey, there's something going on. And right now we have a $98 million budget or something, but the poorest people are going to take a hit. Besides the labs being closed, it's a whole other thing.
Okay. Well, I think in terms of time, Marina, I think, do you have a quick question?
Yeah,
Thanks so much.
quick. Thank you all. And a proposal.
You're on mute, I think, Marina.
Thank you all for being here. If a patient is a county mental health and belongs to a NAMI family and as an established provider who knows him or her well, if this patient ends up in jail for a brush with the law, whether psychosis or a manic episode, my proposal is that the provider at the county should have immediate access to the medical team at the jail because it takes too long for people that don't know the person to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes it takes months or even weeks with the person in a cage. Whereas if that provider can give input, we can solve a lot of issues for everyone, including the people working at the jail and in the community. So I don't understand why there's this complete separation. There's between Emmeline and the jail, there's a couple of miles. Okay, we need a bridge there because providers who know their clients can give a lot of information and we can get on to some treatment before the person decompensates very badly in the jail. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And I'm pretty sure this is still happening, Chris, but there's a meeting every morning to kind of go over who's in jail with mental health issues, and County Behavioral Health participates in that meeting, that morning huddle, every day.
I think the specific provider that knows the person and has treated the person needs to have direct contact immediately, especially in the case of a 5150 gone wrong. And that hasn't happened.
Okay, thank you for those thoughts. Okay, I will close the meeting tonight. Thank everyone that's participated. Thank the speakers. You know, there is uncertainty around budgets and everything. You know, there's a lot. Some of this is out of our control. These unmandated gifts from the state are part of it. But the thing I would take away from this evening is that the values and the commitments that, you know, we all share is what's going to be central for going forward. So despite all these changes and uncertainty, if we just kind of continue to lead through our values as everyone is right now, we'll be as successful as we can be, and we'll continue to push it forward. So let's keep that at top of mind and let the uncertainty kind of set to the side, and let's focus on things that we can take and do. So thank you, everybody, and be safe and be healthy and help someone else. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Chris, Lisa, Karen, Heather, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, it's great. Have a good evening.